business. It's like, but I'm your mom. I don't care. God, I don't do shit like that. I have like low self-esteem. I'm like every other 20-year-old, no self-esteem. Okay, so except I'm not 20. I'm 28. So okay, let's continue. Mio and the others having to set up for the Watanagashi festival or something invited me along, but I refused. Of course I did. How could they be taking it easy and setting up for a festival in this situation? Mio had not a lot of nerve. The first thing I did when I got back was take a shower, not because I wanted to wash off sweat. It was because I wanted to be even calmer. I already understood this, but killing that man would be so very easy. The really hard thing would be not getting arrested for it, so we'd get our peaceful days back. As I thought about it, I realized it wasn't easy. Japan's police force have the highest arrest rate in the world. I need to deceitfully pull off the perfect crime, and it wouldn't be a half-hearted attempt. Still, it wasn't 100%. Even the best police force in the world couldn't have a 100% arrest rate. I've read a lot of articles on trials with people brought up on false charges. They need to determine whether they really are false accusations, but figuring out who the real criminal was is usually out of the question. And that means perfect crimes did exist, that meant. In fact, perfect crimes are sort of like works of art. They could even be respected and revered. You just had to look at the inundation of mystery novels everywhere throughout history. They dealt with all sorts of difficult-to-solve incidents involving secret rooms and alibis and stuff, but they all wanted to show one thing. They wanted to show the beauty of a perfect crime. There was something divine in the flawlessness of the word perfect. Yes, perfect crimes were skills of the gods. And in that sense, the serial freak deaths they were calling the curse of Oyashiro, I understood they must have been the works of gods. Each one appeared to have been resolved, but they couldn't stop it from happening every year. Yeah, skills belonging only to gods. Those are perfect crimes. I would be setting up my own crime before Oyashiro's series of perfect crimes 4 years in the running. If I were to put it boldly, I was challenging a god. Ha! When you think about it, this is an interesting parallel with another character. Challenging a god. I'm not spoiling it, but you'll know what I mean. Interesting how KEIICHI strangely sort of parallels another character that I know. I'm not going to say it yet. Foolhardiness would be needed to make the decision, but I needed to be calm, cool, colder than ice to put the plan together. Kill him like a flame, but as systematic as ice. Starting now, I needed to retain both of those ideas within me. Modeling my crime after a mystery novel wasn't actually a bad thing to focus on. Sometimes kidnappings involving disturbing original methods that made it into the newspaper were used as a basis for novels after the person was arrested. Stuff like that made it into the news. Day and night for a very long time, mystery novel authors polished and refined their most fantastic artistic crimes. Imitating that would be the shortcut to planning the perfect crime in a short period of time. Of course, I haven't read enough mystery novels to act all high and mighty about them. The one who really liked mystery novels was my mom. She'd read every well-known mystery novel from overseas from the past and present. Every time she watched mystery shows, she'd always criticize them of having cheap tricks or being poorly thought out. I wonder what the perfect crime would mean to her. What do I think the most well-done perfect crime in all the mystery novels I've read is? Yeah, well, you read quite a lot of them, right? I figure you might know a lot about them. It's more fun to read them to find out. If I told you all the tricks right off the bat, they'd be no fun anymore. It wasn't like I was asking for my own amusement. She was deflecting the question, so I would somehow butter her up first and draw an answer. Of course, Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None is my top recommendation, and The Murder on the Orient Express used some great bold tricks too. Of course, I didn't see it coming at all. But I want to know which novels you liked. I want to know about the trick that made you the most surprised. If it was really a perfect trick, the detectives wouldn't be able to solve the case, though. That was true, then there'd be no point. Mystery novels are enjoyable because of the process of the mysteries getting solved. If it was unsolvable, it wouldn't make a very good topic for a novel. I get it. Yeah, you're right. If the main character can't solve it, it wouldn't be much of a story, huh? Was I being too simplistic? A mystery novel was basically a game. They were written so that you could get to the goal so you could solve them. But I couldn't use something so optimistic. It needed to be the be-all, end-all of tricks so that we could, without a doubt, return to our old lives. By the way, KEIICHI, do you understand that truly perfect crimes don't even become stories? Mom looked at me intellectually and grinned impishly. I never gotten to read it, but apparently one time long ago, Mom had written her own mystery novel and submitted for the Mystery Novel Award. Apparently, she was really into it. Don't even become stories. What does that mean? Keiichi, what are the essential parts of a story? A beginning, a middle, and an end? Correct. The beginning, of course, is especially important. If there's no beginning, then the story never starts. Well, yeah, if nothing happened, nothing would begin. Right. Nothing happened, so there wouldn't even be an incident. Detectives wouldn't be called, so there wouldn't be any mystery. There would be no mystery, so there would be no solution. In other words, it would be the ultimate perfect crime. Wait a second. Could you explain that again? My mom just told me something absurd, and she was saying it so smoothly, too, so I kind of tuned her out, but she said something extremely important just now. It's not really that difficult to understand. The incident was just never come to light, that's all. Just has to never come to light. Keiichi! For example, how about this? Say there's an old man living deep in the forest nobody goes into. Uh-huh. And one day the old man gets killed by an axe. And, let's say the criminal was an old man's son. He went to the old man's house and they were drinking together, but they got into a fight and he killed him. What an extremely cheap plot. It was an impulsive crime without a bit of planning. It was pretty far from a perfect crime. But Keiichi, the house was really, really deep in this forest. So deep in the mountains that nobody would ever go out that far. Then his son would go back to town and say that the old man was doing fine. What about that is a perfect crime? Keiichi, this incident would only begin when it was found out the old man was killed. If nobody ever visited the old man's house after that, the beginning would never occur. The beginning would never occur. So basically the story wouldn't start. The incident wouldn't come to light, and they wouldn't call in detectives. And nobody would be suspicious in the first place, so there'd be no mystery. They think the old man is still living by himself deep in the forest, and the old man's face would appear in the sky, and that would be it. Something like that, you know. That's amazing! That's a pretty great trick! But it wouldn't be a novel. Mystery novels are for entertainment, after all. They can't be instruction manuals for perfect crimes. I was trying hard to talk to cheerfully fool her, but inside I was excited. Special tools, strange geography, mysterious drugs, traps involving huge sums of cash. None of them were needed for perfect crimes. The important thing was that there wasn't a beginning. As long as the incident didn't come to light, it would be fine. Speaking broadly, if I could kill him without anyone finding out, and dispose of the corpse somewhere no one would find, it could basically be a perfect crime. Of course, if somebody up and vanished one day, all of a sudden people would get suspicious, but that didn't apply to this man. Last year, after their aunt died, he ran away from the village in fear of Oyashiro. The night of Watanagashi came around again, everyone would have to think he ran away in fear again. I mean, he had been living with a lover of his in town. No matter what it felt like when he vanished, no one would be suspicious. People hated him after all. No one would care where he went if he disappeared. In other words, but Keiichi, you're in a mystery novel. What does that mean? Meta. When I thought about it like that, it got easier and easier to imagine killing him. There's no point thinking inside my house anymore. I left, getting my bike out of the garage. For now, it didn't matter where I was going. I just rode through the wind, trying to calm my excitement by feeling the cool air in my body. Where I'd kill him, how I'd do it, what time, and how to dispose of the corpse. If I just had those 4 things, I could get a good plan going. I was surprised at how little there was to decide that I shivered. I'd been completely prepared to build this humongous plan over a really long period of time, but if I could just get these little things in order, I could put it into motion. Today was Saturday. I'd have to kill him on the night of Watanagashi, so as long as I was standing in for Oyashiro, I only had 24 hours remaining. Sadako, just hang on for 24 more hours. I can't even imagine having to suffer through even more, but please, hold out a little longer. I know you can't even last another second. I know that. But please, just hold out. Your Nini will save you for sure. Outside it was still early enough for the cicadas to be crying. Early afternoon. Evening was still a long way off. I looked at the sky. At some point it had gone cloudy. Come to think of it, as I left the house, I heard on TV that the weather forecast was calling for a chance of rain on Sunday. The sky was the color of lead. If I heard a little bit of thunder, I definitely had expected a sudden evening shower. My first destination was school. Before explaining why I was going there, I needed to explain what method for killing that man I had decided upon. I decided the most suitable death, the one I needed to give him, was the same as the last year's curse. It's the same as the punishment their aunt had received, being beaten to death. Wouldn't beating him to death be somewhat unreliable? You may think that stabbing him with a blade would be more reliable, but this was something I had chosen after a lot of thought. You just need to think realistically. The law. It prohibited carrying any blades longer than 10 centimeters, I think. So the blades available to me, long enough were limited to things shorter than a ruler. You can probably understand how tricky it would be in such a short reach to go up against an opponent that might fight back. In that case, using a weapon with a reach would be far more effective. It might not have the same precision, but you just had to hit the guy until you killed him. Both options resulted in death. With that decided, what is that weapon with the most terrifying force behind it that is also easy to carry around? By this point, you should immediately think of a metal baseball bat. I don't need to explain how terrifying a metal baseball bat can be as a weapon. A special note is the fact that you can carry one in broad daylight and not be thought of as suspicious. Just 2 points would have been enough to choose a metal bat for my weapon. But there was one more reason for choosing a metal bat in particular. I will speak about it later. Oh my god, he's going to become that guy in Paranoia Agent. I'm just kidding. After school that Saturday, his name's Even K. Okay, my classmates were still having fun, playing in the schoolyard. I could show up there and it'd be the same as always. So nobody would think I'm suspicious. Getting my hands on the weapon without looking suspicious was actually a factor I couldn't ignore. I didn't normally play baseball, so if I went to the sports store looking for a metal bat, it would definitely be suspicious. I can't let there be a beginning to the story, so I needed to be really careful even about that. That left school. After a location at which my appearance wouldn't be suspicious, I would acquire the weapon. I checked inside the classroom through the window, but of course nobody was there. The only students who would stay in there were me and the others doing club activities. Without us, the classroom after school was just an empty, unused room. Without glancing around nervously, as if I'd just gone to something I'd forgotten, I casually went into the entrance. It looked like the teacher was busy with paperwork in the teacher's lounge. I didn't see her in the hallway. Naturally, that quickly as a shadow I entered the classroom. The empty room was full of strange, stagnant air that you couldn't feel normally. An empty classroom with nobody here. Maybe while no one was around, the desks creaked about their own accord, licking the floors clean of dirt. If I suddenly stepped into a place like that, would the desks and their supply fly at me and crush my bones and eat me alive? That's ridiculous. I felt regret at wasting valuable time thinking on stupid delusions. The students' lockers were lined up in the back of the classroom. The one I was looking for wasn't my own. It was a forbidden locker. One I had accidentally discovered one day. Here it is. Hojo. This has to be it. If one person has one locker, then why would Sadako only have 2? I'd made a fuss about it once. After that, I learned it was Satoshi's locker. He had the same name as her. But of course, even though it was a locker for a student no longer here, looking inside was still a shameless act. But one time I let my curiosity get the better of me and took a peek inside. Inside it was average and worthless. At the time I hadn't been interested, so until now I'd forgotten what had been in it. But now that I had, dare I say, it awakened. I remembered the thing that had been in there. I opened the locker. A stench of mold and sweat wafted out like a gym storehouse that hadn't been cleaned in weeks. My face puckered up at the stench, but I looked for it. Yes, Satoshi was on the coach's baseball team. Inside the locker was the Hinamizawa fighter's uniform. And it. The one Satoshi used. The metal bat. Yes. This is the reason I wanted to choose this bat. This murder would be carried out by me. But this wasn't originally my role. It was Satoshi's. I would stand in for him and call myself Sadako's Nini. It was one of the rules for standing in for him. I reached out for the metal bat and grasped it firmly. It was light, and yet its tip had enough heft in it, enough to easily imagine the horror if I brought it down with all my might. Satoshi, I'll give you one last chance to save your sister. Lend me your strength. You're a coward, but I'll stand in for you. So if you still care even a little bit about her, you will lend me your strength. There's no more suitable weapon in the world for putting that man to death than your bat. Now, I just need to figure out where to hide it. Tomorrow before the act, I would just stop by the school and grab it, because I couldn't ignore the possibility someone would see me bringing it home and thinking it was strange. But if I left it here, there wouldn't be a problem. Plus tomorrow was Sunday. Not only that, it was the day of the biggest festival in the whole village. Nobody would be coming to school. I left out the entrance and went over to the construction vehicle parked nearby. We'd been warned by our teacher not to touch it just for laughs, so none of the kids would come near the vehicle either. They wouldn't, because if she found out they touched it, they'd be in huge trouble. I quietly hid it, in the shadow of the vehicle. The chances of someone operating the vehicle tomorrow were slim to none, because tomorrow was Sunday. Government workers had the day off, and from what my classmates had said, the thing had been left there for years now. Machines that haven't moved in years, you can't just suddenly start them up again, so I was almost definitely fine in this case. The sunlight was piercingly hot. My head grew faint for a moment. Had the heat been this harsh for the entire day? A moment of dulled thoughts like this was a moment of carelessness. I gave myself a couple of hits in the head and looked around warily. Okay, next, how to dispose of the corpse. Damn, Keiichi. I didn't even know some of these informations when I was growing up, bro. Because I'm a total dumbass. Keiichi knows so much shit. Disposing of the corpse. The ultimate way not to create a beginning was not to let the corpse be found. It was even more important than killing him. Thinking on it vaguely, the first thing that came to mind was the swamp. Onikafuchi, the dreadful bottomless swamp revered even now, that appeared in the legends of Onikafuchi village. Yes, the swamp called Onikafuchi was here first, and the village took its name to become Onikafuchi village. In other words, the swamp was the origin of Onikafuchi village. No one, no matter who it was, would float back up to the surface of the bottomless swamp. Everyone would be swallowed down to the land of the demons below the earth. That was how the stories went. If I was trying to copy Oyashiro's curse, and I felt that theory demanded I discard the remains and the weapon into the swamp. But they may have said it was bottomless, but I didn't actually know. And people say large creatures like humans produce a lot of gas when they rot, granting a lot of buoyancy. It's why using fairly heavy objects to hold people down didn't work. Come to think of it, with the curse of the year before last, Rika's mother drowned herself in the swamp, and the colonel behind the dismemberment that went missing the year of the first curse too, it was rumored he tried to discard the body in the swamp and accidentally drowned in it. I never heard of the corpse coming back up or them finding it. Then I choose to discard the corpse there too? I could discard the weapon there. And then, for example, if her uncle came out of the motorcycle and attacked, it'd be convenient to get rid of the bike too. I knew that Sadako's uncle generally used a motorcycle for transportation. But as for the corpse... After a lot of worrying, I decided not to discard the corpse in the swamp. The drowning, suicide, and accident were both rumors. Nobody knew if they actually happened. I'm gonna have to edit that. The drowning and the accident were both rumors. Nobody knew if they actually happened. There was no lack of false rumors about the drowning anyway, and it was possible that the murderer hadn't drowned there, and it was still on the run. That meant no one had ever confirmed a corpse being popped up in there and not coming back up. And what would I do with the body? I thought it might be interesting to go with the first incident, cut him into pieces and hide him. But the preparation and work for dismembering a human body would be difficult given the amount of time I had. With that out of the question, I arrived at the conclusion to go with a more orthodox method of burying the body. And where would I bury it was a question related to where I would kill him. Of course, I wanted to keep my time and proximity to the body at minimum. With that in mind, I'd want to dig a hole to dump the body beforehand and had the location of the act and the hole close together. The choice of where to plan the crime that I needed to be absolutely careful and thorough with. It had to be somewhere nobody would witness it, and a place with hiding places for a sneak attack. I could dig a hole for the body right there. I'd go over the possibilities in my head of the various destinations her uncle would head from to Sadako's house. I imagined a map of the area in my head, and then I found a place that fulfilled those conditions so easily it was almost unbelievable. A bit of the back road went through the woods. I didn't think her uncle would go deeper into the mountains of Yaogochi on a whim. If he was going somewhere, he passed through the woods first, and nobody used this back way unless they had something to do at Sadako's house or one or two other places. This path was fantastically ideal, as few people used it. I'd wait for him in these woods. Would an ambush actually be possible? I went into the trees and tried really hiding myself in a few places. It was extremely quiet. My senses could be sharpened here to their maximum amount. I didn't know when he'd come, but I wait here for Sadako's uncle. I actually had some trouble coming to that decision. The questions arose of whether I should somehow call that man out. Was there a risk I'd be taking by luring him here? That man made Sadako do all the shopping and errands. He seldom left on his own business. He wouldn't leave unless I worked out a plan to force him to, would he? That was the question. Tomorrow was the Watanagashi festival. Would he go out for the festival, or would he stay inside? If he stayed inside, how would I drag him out of his house? That's right. Wouldn't he make Sadako go to the festival? Sadako would go to the festival. Meanwhile, I would call the man. This is the Okinomiya police station. We have the young lady from your house. Could you come and pick her up immediately? It didn't even have to be the police. This is the clinic. The young lady from your house has been injured. Please come and pick her up. Yes, that would work too. If I claimed to be the police or the hospital, told him to come, and then hung up on him, he'd rush there, trying to figure out what was going on, wouldn't he? And just the other day, he was visited by the probation officer. He wouldn't suddenly grumble about having to get his niece and not go. It would look like child neglect. The man had no skills useful around the house. Sadako, his slave, was an essential part of his daily life. Conclusion. If he went out to the festival, I would attack him here on his way there or back. If he didn't, I would lure him out by phone. If luring him out by phone was my first step, I needed to be sure Sadako would go to the festival leaving the house. It would be convenient if I could make Mio take Sadako to the festival. She said her aunt was a district welfare officer, in other words, an ally to the probation officer. If I somehow incited Mio to take Sadako to the festival with her, well, being who she was, she'd use that fact and get her there. Sadako should just take a break and have fun at the festival with everyone. She should have a good time, reminisce on her former peaceful days, and when she went home, everything would be over. Yeah, that would be the best outcome. With that decided, I needed to dig a hole somewhere in the woods to hide the body, so it wouldn't stand out, so it wouldn't be found. Some place nobody would see me while I was completely exposed as I buried the corpse. I had wanted it to be close to the scene of the crime, but it naturally grew farther away. Deep in the bosom of the Black Forest, the voices of the Higurashi were the only sounds here, informing me that people shouldn't indiscreetly set foot in this place. Digging a hole. Digging a hole with so many tree roots crawling around the ground would be far more difficult than I had envisioned. I snuck a guardian spade out here in my bag, but that wouldn't be enough. Still, I looked in various approaches. I managed to find a place I could dig into. Tomorrow, I'd bring a real shovel from the storehouse at home. I'd manage with that. I wondered how big a hole it would have to be to fit a human all the way into it. I'd probably have to dig deep pretty down. But if I was slipshod in these efforts, I'd let a beginning occur. I absolutely couldn't allow that. Use any amount of time you need to. I mustn't spare any effort to utterly erase him. I glanced at my wristwatch. It was a little past 6. This is probably all I was going to get done here for today. I really wanted to dig a hole in advance tonight, even if it got dark out, but my mom would be upset if I stayed out that late. It wouldn't be good to come off as suspicious to my parents. I needed to go back home and give Mion a call soon. I needed to get her to promise Sadako to take her by tonight. After that, today would be done. Done. Would it be, though? Was this really everything I could do to prepare right now? I decided where to kill him. I decided how to kill him. I decided, of course, of how to dispose of the body. I didn't decide on a time, but I'd play that by ear. I didn't have a way to decide that. Was that really all? Was this really all right? Have I overlooked anything? Will this really go how I planned? After all this, worries started to well up one after another. It was only natural I'd be anxious. This would be the first and last big job of my lifetime. I could not allow failure, and I had no experience, and this was my first time. I didn't have the know-how, the knack, so it would only be natural I'd be anxious. The dark clouds of unease told me doing nothing would be the easiest way. A truly pathetic suggestion this late in the game. Have you forgotten how miserable Sadako looked? On the outside it may have looked like I was resolute, but deep in my heart, my knees were shaking loudly. I never actually won a single fight to my satisfaction. Could I really kill someone? I may have been planning an ambush, but my enemy was large and far older than me. He had a scary face, and he looked like he was well accustomed to fighting. Could I have? All the pieces before and after the murder were perfectly planned, but was the actual murder the most important part that unsettled me the most? All my preparations, all of my perfectly concealed machinations, if I didn't successfully murder him, they amounted to nothing. Damn it! After coming this far, you're pathetic, my bar, Keiichi. If you start having these kinds of second thoughts, your ulterior motive would be obvious. Let's go home. Go home and calm your mind. Tomorrow will be a juncture in your life, the likes of which graduation, employment, marriage, and childbirth couldn't hold a candle to. A day of murder. To kill someone. For someone else's sake. With that day behind us, we'd take it back again. Those mild, spring-like days we never thought would stop. Those safe, peaceful, fun times. I pedaled my bicycle hard to get back home. I felt somehow unsteady, like my body and soul weren't in alignment. A subtle shift between where the tips of my hands and feet really were, and where I felt them to be. My vision was a little distant and narrow, as if the great barrier I risked my future life on had nothing to do with me. An unreal sensation. How could I put it? Everything was so far away. I know that feeling. Fine. Feel your unease permeate you, Maru Keiichi. If that will turn your timidity into meticulousness and allow you to act with greater caution, then it's actually an important emotion to feel. This feeling I had never went away that night. It's the first time I'd be calling Mion's house. I searched for her in the phone book the school gave me and dialed a short phone number, the kind unique to remote places. It was around dinner time. She'd probably be home, but just as I started to think that nobody would respond, someone finally picked up the receiver. Hello, this is Sonozaki. Oh, I'm sorry for calling so late at night. Is this Mion? Huh? May I ask who's calling? It's me, Keiichi. Kei-chan, it's pretty late. What's up? She seemed to be in a weirdly good mood, and she drew her syllables out. Right. It's the night before tomorrow's festival. She's probably with her family having some drinks. Sorry for the late call. Do you have some time right now? Sure. What is it? It's about Sadako. I heard her draw in a small breath on the other end. Sadako. She's in a pretty bad spot. I hope she's okay. Oops, sorry. Sadako. She's in a pretty bad spot. I hope she's okay. The scent of sake had completely disappeared from her voice. She can't be okay. You saw it too, didn't you? What she was like? She was completely worn out from all the abuse. We failed her all the time, and now she's become like that. We didn't fail her. Everyone tried their hardest to help her. But we didn't come up with anything, and we couldn't save her. In the end, we couldn't do anything about it, and now she's become like that. I guess you're right. All I did was watch after all. So well, at least. Couldn't we at least let her have fun for one night? Huh? Let her have fun? She'd been so battered lately, you would understand. That's why I want you to take her to the Watanagashi Festival tomorrow. I don't mind, but why? Why? I want to give her a breather, at least for the festival night, you know? Even if it's just one night, if she can get away from her evil uncle, I think she'll be happy, even if it's only for a little while. Yes, but why? Why? Why what? I was having a little difficulty understand what Mia was asking me. Why? Well, I mean, why don't you bring her, Kei-chan? Why do you need to ask me to do it? Mia was persistent about odd things. No, maybe it would be better to say that she was sharp. I actually have something to do tomorrow. I can't make it to the festival, so I want you to take Sadako there for me. Something to do? It's nothing major. I'll probably finish quickly, but I might not be able to meet up with all of you at the festival tomorrow. Hey, Mion, could I leave Sadako for you just for tomorrow night? Mion took a long time to give her reply. I got the feeling that Mion had been acting weird for a while now, like she'd been flustered by emotions or something. No. Huh? Was that a sob? Mion, are you crying? I said no. I don't want to. I don't want you to push this onto someone like me. I'm not trying to push anything onto you. It's just for tomorrow night. That was a lie! What? Mion, was she talking about? Saying it's just for the night of Watanakashi, and then it was forever. Liar. But I guess we're even, huh? I couldn't keep the promise I made with you. I left her alone. Alone all this time. I had no idea what to say to that. Mio was clearly now talking to someone other than me. I didn't know who. All I could do was listen to her in a daze. Listen to those words. Think about what that means. Because it's more than the obvious about Satoshi, but Mion. I'll explain that later. You never came back after that, and now you call me again to push her onto me. You're so unfair. Hey, you're Satoshi, aren't you? Mion, what are you talking about? When I said her name, whatever spell was Mion on released. I'm sorry. It's nothing. It's just that I got a phone call like the one that you're making now, a long time ago. Was it from Satoshi? Mio didn't answer. All I could hear were sobs coming through the receiver. Sorry, I think I'm still a little tipsy. I got all weirdly emotional. Sorry, I probably scared you. I had no idea how it happened. I was pretty sure that last year on this very day, Satoshi had called Mion and told her to bring Sadako to the festival. When she asked why he needed her to do it, he replied the same way just like I did. Satoshi didn't go to the festival, did he? Yeah. He said he had something to do and couldn't make it, and he told me to take Sadako there in his place. At the time, Satoshi said it too, didn't he? That he'd leave Sadako to you. Yeah, he did. Just for tomorrow night. The way you said it was just like how he did. I just got a little upset and caught up in the memory and all. I didn't expect this. Satoshi had given her the exact same phone call 1 year ago today. Mion kept going after that. That he was lying. That he told her it would only be for the night of the festival. I get it. A few days later, Satoshi, he disappeared. Disappeared might have been a vague way to put it. Whether he ran away or not, Satoshi left, abandoning Sadako. Yes, he didn't transfer or run away from home. He disappeared. And then an idea far more indistinct than even fog crossed my mind. Satoshi made the exact same phone call as me last year. Why would Satoshi make this exact same call? If in the truest sense, he really made the exact same phone call as I am right now, then the incident where the aunt was beaten to death. Could it... Was Satoshi... Huh? What was that? Last year, Sadako had been constantly abused by her uncle's wife, their aunt too. Her aunt abused her the most. On that night, in the name of Oyashiro's curse, she was taken from this world. If I thought about that, everything made perfect sense, didn't it? Last year, Sadako's aunt was beaten to death, wasn't she? Would it be impossible for Satoshi to have... No, but that would mean... But then Satoshi, he was a coward who abandoned Sadako and ran away, wasn't he? How could Satoshi resolve himself to kill a person to save Sadako? It was unthinkable. I actually considered that as well, though it would mean to Satoshi. A few days later, he disappeared. On Sadako's birthday. When I first heard it, I flew into a rage. What a cruel day to have run away on, but now that I thought about it like this, the story changed completely. Satoshi had probably been even less calm than I was now. He was her big brother, related by blood, watching his little sister be abused day in and day out. Maybe that's why he couldn't keep calm. And that was why the corpse of their aunt beaten to death was so easily discovered. Satoshi lost himself in his anger and hadn't hidden the corpse. He permeated a beginning to occur. If the police conducted a full-blown investigation, it was easy to imagine they wouldn't take long to pin down Satoshi as the culprit. Satoshi, he wished for a return to peaceful days with Sadako. and though he achieved it for a time, he'd been steadily driven to a corner, and then he wanted to at least hold out until Sadako's birthday, but finally they nailed him. At the time Satoshi had been carrying the savings he amassed to buy Sadako a giant stuffed animal for a birthday present. He'd buy the stuffed animal as her gift and then get caught, or he could use the money and disappear. That was the choice he'd been forced to make, and he decided not to make Sadako the sister of a murderer. If that was the case, it must have been an unspeakably bitter decision. All the money he'd saved wanting to see Sadako happy, he'd used it to make her sad. And he used the savings and disappeared to Tokyo, if the rumors are true. Was that how Satoshi disappeared? I don't know. That Oishi guy seems to think that way, though. Listen to how Mion mentions Oishi. What is Mion's usual attitude toward Oishi? This is just important because I have a theory. I'm going to tell you to remember the phone calls in Watanagashi. Okay? Just as a hint. Oishi, had he been slowly driven to the corner by that repulsive man's pig-headed pursuit? There's circumstantial evidence is all there, but I think your deduction is wrong. They caught some crazy jug addict somewhere in the prefecture, and he apparently turned himself in for the crime. I was right. The deviant had confessed and the incident was resolved. They said he was really just a crazy person, and he had no ties to Hinamizawa, and no relationship with Satoshi, of course. I mean, I have a pretty hard time believing that guy would lie in Satoshi's place. You couldn't just arbitrarily decide that. You would never know where or how humans are tied together. If that guy took the blame, then it was the perfect crime. Of course, if it really was a perfect crime, there would have been no reason for Satoshi to vanish. Plus, I don't think Satoshi had the kind of money to run away. That day he withdrew all his savings. No matter who I tell this to, nobody believes me, but that stuffed animal he said he was buying for Sadako, it was gone from the display, sold. It must have been Satoshi. Remember this clue always. I will tell you when this is important and when this comes up. Wait a minute, if he didn't use the money to flee and brought the stuffed animal instead, he would have gone back to Sadako, wouldn't he? It seems unbelievable he'd buy it and then disappear without having given it to her. Yeah, so now I don't know what happened. It'd be one thing if he had the money, but if he used all his savings, he'd be totally broke. You can't live a life on the run without money in this world. I didn't get it. After all that, I was understanding Satoshi less and less. The two of us fell silent. I couldn't remember how we even got on this topic. Sorry, I think we got off topic. Sadako, right? Don't worry. I actually already invited her. Huh? You serious? When everyone went to the shrine to prepare for the festival, we started talking about getting Sadako to the festival itself, so then I used the phone at the assembly hall to invite her. Her uncle was acting distant and didn't seem to care at all, but in any case we got the okay from him. We decided to all meet up and go together tomorrow. You okay with that? Satoshi? Stupid. I'm not Satoshi. I was a little relieved. I hadn't needed to make the phone call. Sadako had already been invited to the festival. And not in the way that smelled of blood, a way to leave her uncle alone to create time for me to kill him. They purely wanted Sadako to enjoy herself, so they invited her. In the end, it was the same, but I was happy for that slight difference. You know, I want to say something. The way that Sadako was forced away from her friends, and all her friends get to have fun without her in that sense, or they hang out, it makes me think about my life, because I kind of have this situation where I can't always meet my friends in that sense, because I'm kind of forced to be sheltered in that sense. Yeah. And if I try, I get a lot of hassle. Things like that. It's because I'm Asian. Anyway, sorry. I guess I didn't need a call then. First yesterday, now today. Sorry for saying such weird things. Just forget about it. No, I'm the one who should apologize. Losing it like that isn't like me. I'm really sorry. We apologized to each other for a little bit. Alright, I'll be going now. Good night. What did you have to do? As if interrupting our parting words, Mion struck straight where it hurt. Or is it like with Satoshi, where you can't say? Stupid. I keep telling you I'm not Satoshi. Yeah, I know that. I deflected her with a response that wasn't really an answer. Mio didn't hound me anymore after that. Alright, this time for real. Good night. I don't know why you're giving me the same phone call as Satoshi did, but... yeah, never mind. I'm sorry. Good night. I'm hanging up. Ooh. I know what's going on. I'm just telling you, so I'm just giving you some hints. Hojo Satoshi, just who are you? I scorned you as a coward who ran away abandoning his sister. I always thought that you didn't have the right to call yourself her Nini, but now I didn't know what to think. Oyashiro's curse on the 4th year, their aunt's death, and Satoshi's disappearance. And now, me trying to carry out Oyashiro's curse on the 5th. Oddly enough, what I was going to do overlapped perfectly with Satoshi the day before the curse. No, that wasn't all. If we start back from Sadako being abused, then I had been overlapping with Satoshi for days already. When I talked to Mion before, she asked me if I was Satoshi. If that was the first impression the third party like Mion got. It was probably true. And as Satoshi had accomplished, I would have succeeded in the murder. But that was the extent to which we overlapped. I was far calmer than Satoshi, and more calculating. I could actually grow calmer. The more enthusiastic I became. That's why I wouldn't fall in Satoshi's footsteps. I would snip him cleanly out of the world, and then get our peaceful life back. Maybe Satoshi has been with me ever since I chose to use Satoshi's bat as my weapon. No. Maybe even longer than that. When I decided I'd be her Nini, maybe Satoshi had been residing within me then too. Satoshi, are you really a coward? Or are you a true Nini even now, the kind worthy of Sadako's love? I've never met him, never spoken to him, didn't even know his face, and yet I felt so connected to him. I never felt that way before. I really love how Satoshi has such interesting connections despite not even showing up. I mean, this is kind of pointed out to me from Beth Sonozaki. I've watched I watch a lot of her videos, especially like the 6-hour one. Oh my god! Okay, tips for the attention of those on the Housewives slaughter incident case. Because I wish she did more Higurashi videos. I'll watch every single one. I love all of her work for Higurashi. I'd love to see an Umineko one. So anyway, for the attention of those on the Housewives slaughter incident case. I just never talk to anybody online because I usually lurk unless like I'm on TikTok because I'm like super shy. So, July 1982. Okinomiya Police Station, 1st Investigative Division, Chief Takasugi. Prefecture Police Headquarters for the Eradication of Drug-Related Crime, Shishibone Branch Head, regarding the incident, designated as an undercover investigation. This message is to inform you that the section of the testimony records of the incident under this police headquarters jurisdiction has been found that is thought to be related to the undercover police investigation of the incident in question, Okinomiya Police Station X, Hinamizawa Village, housewife slaughter incident. During investigations of suspect who was arrested for possession of illegal drugs, there was a testimony related to the crime in question, and as part of it we learned that the criminal had information only he could have known. Therefore, this record of testimony duplicate attached will be provided to you. If this testimony is to be believed, then there is an extremely high chance that the suspect was the culprit behind the incident in question. In addition, the head investigator on the case received this report and inquired as to the incident with the Okinomiya Police Station, but the responsible party at Okinomiya Police Station who responded in the designated undercover investigation announced by the Prefectural Police's General Director in July 1st, 1982, Fusakane at B1-112. 12 misunderstood that he did not explain the incident existence to the head investigator on the case properly. Because of this, the case head's investigator was not aware of the importance of the testimony as it related in the case in question. As a result, was negligent in covering the scene. We apologize for having left it in the dark until now. I'm just not saying this. In addition, there's a postscript saying that the suspect died while in confinement yesterday on Okay, so there's like more hints. Alright, so let's continue. Sunday. The fireworks I'd heard before noon were probably to announce the opening of the festival. And the weather certainly wasn't festival weather. It was cloudy. The television forecast was calling for possible downpours, starting this evening and lasting until around midnight. But as long as it wasn't raining at the moment the festival would go on. The festival had to open or it wouldn't begin. The Furude shrine grounds were probably decorated beautifully for the big performance that only happened once a year. Many paper lanterns were all hung up in the auspicious colors of red and white, the sound of electric motors at the stalls, the voices of kids running around, their happy families watching them, smiling. Today was the festival, Watanagashi. Was everyone already partaking in the festivities? What about Sadako? Has she forgotten her days of suffering just for the few moments, while smiling that brilliant smile she hadn't in so long? This would probably be the longest day of my life. It'd probably be a day I would remember vividly for as long as I lived. I told my parents I'd go to the festival this evening and lounge about during the early afternoon. We may have lived under the same roof, but they couldn't help being surprised by the deviation from how I usually spent my time. Glancing at my parents out the corner of my eye, I went to the front door. I tied my shoes just a little tighter than normal, as if to express the firmness of my resolve in those knots. When I decided to murder Sadako's uncle, I was in such a state of excitement I almost went crazy. And when I was planning out the act of murder, which went directly against all the morals fostered in me thus far, I was in such a state of calm. I almost thought I had lost my emotions. And then yesterday, when I learned Satoshi had made exactly the same phone call as me, I didn't know how to describe the muddled feelings I had then. And now, entering today, right now I lacked all the emotion that I possessed until now. To make a simple analogy, it was the kind of feeling you might get right after you wake up, when you're still half asleep and you don't feel anything very clearly. I had no anger toward that man for the violence he committed against Sadako, nor did I feel sadness towards or sympathize with her. I felt no discontent toward my friends, who had just waited and watched, never reaching out for her with any help, and no nervousness or fear toward the day that had finally come. Yes, right now. You could say I was in the best possible condition for carrying out a murder. When it came down to it, I'd probably need to let my violent emotions take control, but right up until that point, I'd be like an insect. I would slowly, surely, and silently move toward my one objective. And then when I had my prey, I'd attack like a bullet. There was no emotion in that, just the creeping mindsets insects possessed. That sort of sneaking feeling was just the best. I would kill Sadako's uncle like he was a worm. I had to laugh a little thinking that way, thinking like an insect. I tightened my laces on one more time and walked out the door. I brought the shovel out in the front storeroom. I would need it to dig the man's grave. The shovel was a convenient one made for camping. If I twisted it like so and split it into 3, I could easily hide it in my bag. I twisted the shovel and dismantled it. And even though I had done it countless times before, I had trouble for some reason, like I was suddenly clumsy now. I knew why. It wasn't because I was nervous. My weak-willed self deep within me was hesitant. I knew the act of dismantling the shovel was the first step I'd take to becoming a murderer. The last twist was conspicuously difficult, but it finally submitted before the strength of my determination. The area around Sadako's house was outside my circle of activity, but even just riding my bike in the middle of the day like this might seem suspicious to an observant person. I definitely wanted to avoid meeting and talking to someone I knew. With that in mind, I chose the route to my destination very carefully. I didn't mind the long way around. With how long this day would be, I could never be too careful after all. Still, I was fortunate enough not to run across anybody on my way to the planned site of the crime. I wasn't superstitious at this point, but it was a good omen. The place where I'd dig a hole was in this grove, a little further into the woods. I was worried I might not make it to the same place as before, since there were no signs to guide me, but I arrived there smoothly, and as expected, I took another look around. Not even a hint of another human presence. The air was a little bit damp, but it was comfortable in the cool shade of the trees. I took the disassembled shovel out of my bag and began skillfully putting it together. Then I stuck the tip of the shovel into the soft-looking patch of ground, and I pushed on it with my foot. The shovel would split into the earth if I put some strength into that foot. The act of doing so seemed awfully like the point of no return, and it made me hesitate. I was just digging a hole with a shovel, but it made me gulp hard. Calm down, my brother Keiichi. Let's do a countdown. get it done on the count of 3, okay? All right. 1, 2. I couldn't do it on the countdown, despite it being just sticking the shovel into the ground. I had to count down 5 or 6 times. Damn it. I'm just digging a hole. This is pathetic. As I thought that, I put the strength to my heel like I was stepping on something unpleasant, and split came the sharp noise. It was only soft at the beginning. Roots and stones quickly got in my way, informing me just how hard it was to dig a hole big enough for a person. No decent person would ever come here anyway. Maybe it'd be big enough to cover it up with some dirt. Every time a naive thought like that crept into my mind, I bit down on him with my teeth and dug even harder. I dug enough now. I could hide him like this. Every time I thought that, I would go down into the hole, grow disappointed at how shallow it was, and return to digging. A thin layer of sweat on my brow eventually formed drops and fell to the ground. My back was in even worse shape. My damp shirt adhered to my skin, and it felt so disgusting. The things I couldn't stand the most were the mosquitoes. Maybe they were attracted by the scent of my sweat. The black and white striped mosquitoes would cling to me whenever I let my guard down. It was hot. It was disgusting. I was sticky. I was itchy. All these uncomfortable feelings surged through me in waves. Damn it all. So what? Are you telling me to pack up and go home? Is that it? I hadn't yelled at anyone. It was me talking to myself. Me telling myself something. Why was I feeling this way? And digging a hole all the way out here? What benefit would digging this hole give me? What harm would there be in not digging a hole at all? Wait, in the first place, who ordered me to dig? When I thought about it over, maybe ever since grade school or before that, my whole life had only been me doing what other people had told me to do. I didn't mean it was somehow constrained, living a life just based on the commands of others. And I didn't mean I was too lazy to try and find my own road in life. Metaphorically speaking, yes. It was like a road. I'd never been particularly physically fit. I didn't hit puberty very early, and if all my classmates and I got in a line, I'd usually be on the shorter end. My scores in jump rope competitions and marathons were the very picture of average. It wasn't like the captains of dodgeball teams would have a passionate rock, paper, scissors contest to see which would get me. During those kindergarten and grade school years, it felt like someone was only worth how fast they grew, how fit they were. Looking back on it now, it was really uncomfortable for me. The thing that turned all that around was just a few words from my mother. Keiichi, would you like to go to cram school? You'll get better grasp what you're learning in school, and it'll be more fun. The very first test I took at the cram school was kind of like a game. It was a lot of fun. It wasn't like the test with the same exact problems dozens of times in a row. Every question had a picture to it, almost like one of those puzzle books that came with manga magazines. If my studies at school had been like this, it would have been way more fun. Several days later, I went to the cram school again with my mother and the enrollment paperwork. Mom and the person at the cram school had a really long, heated discussion, so I accidentally dozed off and missed most of what they said, but I clearly remember one point. Mom had made a loud groan, surprised at something. By 61, do you mean his average score was 61 points? No, not at all, Mrs. Maibara. The meaning deviation of a cram school all across the country is 61. He's showing rare numbers, even if this was a simplified intelligence examination. First, I'd like to say that Maibara Keiichi is extremely bright. Keiichi? But he doesn't have very good grades at school. He has very average marks on his report cards. B's, C's, D's. Is there some kind of mistake? We gave him the Kraepelin test as well, and we learned some very interesting things as a result. Myra is extremely weak when faced with questions that don't have any meaning. He just has no interest in simple, dull questions that don't have to do with everyday life. So even if he doesn't know what 2 plus 3 is, if you told him he had 2 apples and got 3 more, he would understand that sort of question? That's right. For example, instead of telling him to draw a flattened, foldable cube, what if we asked him what a die would look like when we cut open? If he did that, he can answer beautifully. The person from the cram school showed her a page from one of the exams I took. It was a paper with questions about construction. Construction questions were unusual, so they were really cool, weren't they? In this question, it asked to draw an unfolded regular icosahedron, a shape with 20 faces. When we rephrased it and asked him how he would cut out a piece of cardboard to create a 20-sided die, Keiichi drew the answer as though it were easy. This is not something an average child can do. Keiichi, have you ever made a die with 20 sides on a magazine extra or anything? Dice only went from 1 to 6. I never even considered before the test that there were dice with more than 6 sides, so it was fun to imagine what kind of shape a die that went up to 20 would have. If I had a die like that, I'd win at dice games against anyone, so I immediately wanted to make it. Finally, I entered cram school. There were only 4 students in the class they put me in, which was called Select. It was the highest class, and some of my classmates were in lower classes. And when I remember how much better they had done at things like dodgeball and the 50-meter sprint, I felt happiness well up within me for the first time. Even if I wasn't good at them physically, I triumphed over them in other ways. It was fun at first. The more I did, the more I was praised. My teachers at school suddenly started pampering me, and it felt good. My parents were satisfied too, and I enjoyed seeing them satisfied. The more I listened to my parents' commands, the more fun things got. That did happen, didn't it? I grinned dryly in self-depreciation. Because, well, my studious lifestyle didn't end up lasting very long. It was only at the beginning I enjoyed learning more and more. I gradually got along less with my friends. My classes were behind while I was learning in cram school. I eventually stopped respecting the teachers given that they could put me to sleep with their lectures. And while I was a disagreeable sort who bragged a lot about how much they knew and the ways of the world wouldn't let me remain in that state of ecstasy forever. I would do as I was told, and I'd go above and beyond their expectations, and when they praised me, I was happy for that, and the cycle repeated itself like wheels on a bike. I thought moving forward like that was how life worked, like a bicycle. When I moved to Hinamizawa, I realized just how inadequate that was. Something happened, and we started saying how moving and getting a change in atmosphere would be nice. And my father, he had a place like he liked that he'd gone to a few places to draw the nature. He started saying that he wanted to bring his Altair here. With me in blank amazement, they decided to move to Hinamizawa. And after that, I met them, didn't I? I love how Keiichi is like I love how like he's like so simple when he talks, but inside he's so introspective. I really love that about him in that sense. He's not my favorite character, but when I read the visual novels, I really learned how to appreciate him because I could not appreciate him in the anime and all, and I thought he was stupid and I hated him. I was like, he's the worst out of the protagonists. I would make fun of him a lot. So yeah. Anyway, the first day after transferring here, I went to the classroom with the teacher. I thought it would seem pitiful for her to bring me in there, so I placed my hand on the door before she could, slammed it open, and set foot into the room. The thrilling, powerful way I opened that door was none other than my own determination to try doing my life over again. And then, within seconds, that determination took a hard counter to the face. A blackboard eraser fell on me, plus there was a huge rock inside. It was a supremely painful trap someone had set up. Oh, come on. Sadako was already beating me right there from the first day I transferred? That frightened me. I was bewildered. The class was surprised too. I wasn't just surprised that the students in the class were all in different grades and were different genders. It was because the room felt completely different from the schools I knew. As I spent more time with them, my surprise continued to grow. This fresh sense of surprise had never left my life even to this day. Every day was a fresh new surprise. I never had a single boring day since coming here. The days were lively, spent with other club members. We played Old Maid with cards with scratches on the back to cheat. We let all our passions go wild during our games. We went all out as regular participants in tournaments at the toy store in town and many, many more things. Recently, during those times, there was a bento competition. It was that's when I saw an unexpected side to Sadako. Thinking back on it, I only ate dinner with her for 2 nights. It was such a sweet, gentle time spent, and it warmed my heart remembering it even now. I realized that Sadako was pretending to be stubborn and firm, and how brave she was. Part of her heart always waiting for her Nini to come home, and I vowed to become her Nini. Sadako may have been nagging and overly critical, but she knew how to take care of someone. But though it might have seemed like she was taking the lead, it was actually her way of depending upon another person. Even if Satoshi and Sadako's lives as siblings were confined by their uncle and his wife, they were still warm, sunny days. When did those sunny days all go wrong? What mistake was made? Lamenting tragedies of the past would do no good. I told myself so many times, but I did anyway. Keiichi, isn't that why you chose your own path to take that life? Nobody ordered you to do this. You decided on your own. You don't desire anyone's praise for this. You thought it through all yourself. You'll carve it out yourself. And you'll do it now. This wasn't a path I could see from very far down. Not like the other road parents or society would offer. It was a narrow path, dark, and utterly distressing. One for which the next step would always be shrouded in darkness. But that disheartening path would keep on going forever. It was an unlimited path. There was nowhere I couldn't travel. The kind of path only available to those able to imagine where they wanted to go. Don't be ashamed at breaking from the brightly lit paved road. In fact, feel proud that you found your very own path to walk. I hadn't discarded the paved road either. Once I achieved my goal, I would go back to that bright road, and then I'd spend those average sunny days at my leisure. When I next realized that the hole had grown so deep I couldn't believe it, did I dig all this myself? I think digging this much is enough, right? I put my shovel into the bottom of the hole. I would drag the body in there and throw it into the hole and cover it up with dirt. Even if it took me time to camouflage it by putting plants on top, it would all go much more easily than digging the hole this hole had. I glanced at my watch. It was almost evening, and I hadn't realized it. I may not have felt the time passing, but digging a hole this deep must have taken quite a lot of time. I took a seat on the slanted rock nearby and wiped the sweat from my brow. Now, once it got a little darker, I'd go get the metal bat I hid in the schoolyard. Then I'd make the call to lure him out, and then I'd do it. The number of things I needed to do to reach that moment were dwindling. I felt that moment closing in on me much more keenly than I did the passage of time. I didn't have any hesitation, but I still felt that contradiction. At every step in this process, I had few chances to hesitate to turn back and let myself lose my nerve. Having to endure those million temptations and wait for when that time was right was an indescribably slow and painful torture. I thought myself acting all weak because of that, but I stopped midway through. This was okay. It was fine. I could detest the abnormal act of homicide as much as I wanted, and it didn't matter. I wasn't going to be a cutthroat killer after today. I'd pass through this strange day and go back to the world I was in before. If I fell to the level of a psychopath who thought nothing of killing, I wouldn't be able to go back to my old life. So this was fine with me. I didn't have to feel ashamed at hesitating to kill, because I was human. It was so funny to me that I'd be the bearer of Oyashiro's curse. At the same time, I was aware I was human. I exhaled lightly and stood. I concealed my presence and sharpened my senses in all directions to search for anyone around but me. Okay, let's go. One step at a time. I would walk my own path, a path no one had forced me to walk. Let's do this, my Keiichi. The cicadas made an annoying fuss. Their chorus covered up the suspicious noises of me breaking twigs underfoot. Their chorus filled the path far ahead of me, letting me know I would be alone for some time. The cicadas blessed the path I walked, encouraging me with every last ounce of strength they had. The sky was far above. In not even an hour the veil of night would draw near. The sky would be tinted with dusk. By the time the Higurashi would be letting me hear their chorus in the place of the cicadas. When that happened, would everything be over with? Would everything have ended? I said something along those lines when I left Sadako's fate up to the public agency. But this time was different. I would do it. I would carry it out. I would end it. It would all be over very soon. Everything would end. Yes, when the Higurashi cried. I really love just how Keiichi, he cares about his friends so much. I really love that. Even if he's doing something wrong. Anyway. I didn't really have friends growing up, so I didn't have friends until I was an adult, so honestly, God, I wish I had friends like that growing up so bad. Okay, anyway. There was nobody at school. I couldn't hear the playful noises of children. This was the first time I'd seen the school with such a lack of human presence. Still, I quieted my breath and looked around, not wanting to be unprepared. It'd gone darker outside, but it was almost like my eyes could see more clearly now. I made absolutely sure of my safety and walked to the heavy construction machine I'd hidden the metal bat behind. I had a tinge of worry, a premonition that somebody had found the bat and hidden it somewhere else as a prank. If that happened, would I take that as an opportunity to desist? If it really wasn't there, then the sensation of chilled metal. It was still there where I left it. It hadn't run away. Satoshi hadn't run away. He waited there patiently for me. Sorry for the wait, Satoshi. It's been a long time coming. You prepared for this? The metallic touch. Satoshi grins at me in my mind. That's what I should be asking, you know. I did this last year already. You should be more worried about yourself. Right on, Satoshi. Let's show him a bad time. Satoshi's bat got lighter and lighter. It fit into my hands like it was being absorbed. It didn't feel wrong to swing this. I could move it around so naturally. It was like an extension of my own right arm. Of course it felt like that. Satoshi and I were holding one bat together. Next, I would make the call to lure that man out. It wasn't a bad time for it. My friends were doubtlessly parading happily throughout the stalls. I hadn't considered where to make the call from. My house and Sadako's were pretty far apart. If I called from my house, I wouldn't make it. Couldn't I use the school phone? But as I thought, the room was locked up and I couldn't get in. Shit! I'm so naive. You should have at least figured this part out. I couldn't call him, and just for that, today was all over? I'm sorry, Satoshi. Just as I cursed my own naivete, a miracle occurred. A bicycle came into the schoolyard. It was a familiar middle-aged man, the one for the Forest Service field office. Why wasn't today Sunday? Was he here to pick something up he forgot? Anyway, the forest officer went back around and felt in his pocket and unlocked the door and entered. The best possible coincidence. It had to be Satoshi who saved me. The metal bat, through my contact with it, told me this was a chance I couldn't allow to slip by. The sections for the forest office and the school were neatly separated. I felt the man head into the forest office's storehouse, which was so far in the back students were allowed into it. The door didn't match the fittings well, so it didn't close all the way. The gap in the door opened slowly as to lure me in. I took a deep breath and went in. I tiptoed along, silently and stealthily, and made it into the teacher's lounge. It was the only place with a phone. I held my breath in the teacher's lounge. I heard the Forest Service officer walking back over, then the door clattered shut and was locked. I glanced out the window at the schoolyard and watched as the man got on his bike like nothing had happened and rode out the school gate. The school once again emptied, becoming deathly silent. I waited for a bit to make sure the silence was the real deal and reached for the telephone on the principal's desk. I fished Sadako's house phone number out of my pocket. Yes, the number in the class directory for Sadako had been one of them at their house now, where she lived with her uncle. I touched the dial with my fingers, and then thought for a moment about what to say exactly when he picked up. Despite how many times I'd gone over it in my head last night, now that I had my finger on the dial like this, it started to seep out of my mind like a cracked bucket leaking water. Simple would be best. More importantly, to say it straight, not sound suspicious. I counted off 3 heartbeats and spun the dial. The call sound. Would Sadako's uncle pick up? Now of all times, the hope he wouldn't pick up, the feeling of doom and the knowledge that I couldn't save Sadako if he didn't, whirled around in a vortex. Hello? It was the voice of a grumpy man like he had just woken up. He picked up. Hello? Say your name so I know you're Hojo, you asshole! It'd be terrible if I got it wrong. I made up my mind. I had all the initiative on my side. Here we go. This is a Shishibone Okonomiya police station. Am I speaking to the Hojo residents? I was changing my voice, but did he really think I sound like an adult? Would he believe I was the police? Oh yes, this is Hojo. We currently have your daughter Hojo Sadako here with us. What? Sadako? What'd that brat do? He fell for it. I could tell by how tense that he didn't doubt my words. I can explain the particulars once you arrived here. Would you mind coming to the station right away? Right now? I already took a bath myself, so I don't really want to go out like this, though. What? You don't want to come because you already took a bath? Yes, right away. Right away? Jeez, man, what the heck did Sadako do? I'll explain once you're here. I'll be waiting. Thank you for your assistance. 1 second. I don't know where the police station is. Where am I going? You moron, what the hell? The Okinomiya police station? I don't know where it is either. Aren't you from around here? Why don't you know that? A greasy sweat came over my body. Eventually, just as I was about to choke, he spoke. Oh, next to the fire station, right? That's pretty far. Thank goodness he remembered on his own for me. I didn't care where the police station was, so as long as he left his house to get there. Then we'll be waiting here. Oh, wait! Who am I asking for once I get there? What is your name? On top of that, he wanted to know my name? Just leave your goddamn house already! Mayabashi. Excuse me. That was close. I almost thought that they told him my real name. I managed to change the last syllable of it, but I put the receiver down like I was running away. My fingers were trembling. I was soaked with a tepid sweat. I wasn't just nervous about the phone call. With that call, everything had finally been put into motion. Keiichi screwed up. No, I'm just kidding. I left the school. It was locked before, but it was easy enough to open from the inside. But I couldn't lock it again after I left. In terms of being thorough, I wanted to lock it, but I couldn't waste time going back to the teacher's lounge and looking for the key. I needed to rush back as soon as I could and ambush him. I zoomed back to the scene on my bike. If Sadako's uncle got out of town before I got there, everything would be over. He'd learned there was no one at the station named Mayabashi, and things would get pretty messed up. As I turned at full speed, I passed a family wearing yukatas. They must have been on their way to the festival. Many people in Hinamizawa knew my face, though. I didn't know theirs. Just passing by them like this made me uneasy. But I didn't generally come around here, so those living in the area might not have known much about me. That didn't matter right now. I needed to get back as fast as possible to control my breathing and ambush the man. I hid my bike in the thicket and picked up Satoshi's bat, which I had left hidden in the shade, and then I held my breath, waiting to see someone. I wondered if he still hadn't gotten here, or maybe he went out right after the phone call and passed by here already. I couldn't figure out which it was, and was set upon by an indescribable impatience. Calm down, Maibara Keiichi. Even if he came here already, he's passed by here on the way back, right? The end result would be the same. It wouldn't change the fact that he'd die. He'd probably be coming on his motorcycle. How would I stop him then? I figured it'd be best not to think too hard and just hit him as he passed or beat him out of his seat. The path was made of pebbles. If I hit him as hard as I could and made him lose his balance, he wouldn't be able to help falling. And then, the chorus of the Higurashi stopped. The sound of the bike approached from far away. I couldn't tell what sort of motorcycle it was from its sound, but I'd seen it parked before, so I'd know. It was getting rapidly closer. It was almost here. If he just went a little farther, he'd cross into that thicket and appear in front of me. I'd take a moment to make sure it was him. And then when I had, I put my plan in action. The motorcycle appeared. A few easily identified characteristics told me it was Sadako's uncle's bike without a doubt. Was it really him? Was it really Sadako's uncle? I wasn't making a mistake, was I? I looked at its characteristics again. Its color, shape, and most of all the man's clothes. That face! Those last feelings of hesitation. I did away with them. Sadako. Now, your Nini will end it, okay? Closer, closer. The bike came closer. Let's go. Satoshi! Yeah. I jumped out of the thicket. I used my shoulder to basically tackle the uncle on the bike with all my might. He gave a dumb shout as the bike completely lost its balance, Finally it fell, the bike scattering clouds of sand, and after spinning it stopped. Her uncle tossed to the ground, didn't understand what had happened, and groaned for a few moments and crouched on the ground. My breathing started to become ragged. No, I couldn't have this emotion. Some weird secretion crossed through my brain and nearly made me hallucinate. Her uncle was groaning. Now was the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. What was I doing? All the sounds in the world cut off. My mental chaos from the moment ago withdrew like a lie. I could feel the temperature in my head rapidly cooling down. The tensions of my muscles all went away like strings that they'd been attached to had been cut, and I let my hands dangle at my sides. It wasn't quite like exhaustion. Have you calmed down now? Maibara Keiichi, do you need to remember again why things got to this point today? I stepped over the pebbled path, taking one step, and another towards Sadako's uncle. The more I walked, the more my breathing calmed. The more I walked, the more I felt my body cooling, calming, chilling with frost. Yes, at this moment, this guy had lost permission to live. I just rescinded it. So he mustn't stay in this world any longer. If he lived any longer, if Sadako's misfortune continued, it would be my responsibility for having allowed him to live. I could feel the cooling substance going through my whole body, even down to my capillaries. Her uncle was at my feet now, still on the ground like an idiot. I smiled coldly at how ridiculous he looked. Ugh, that hurt! That's all it took for it to hurt. Sadako's hurt much more, and now you're gonna feel that? With your life, I'll make up for her pain! I erased all unnecessary information from my mind. I prioritized the murder of this man. Execute, execute, execute! Utterly calmly, I delivered my first strike to the back of his head. I wanted to get the most expected spot, at least during the moment. I'd have to attack him while he was at his most defenseless. And if he was hit in the head, he'd cover his head. It was a defensive reaction all humans made like machines. He used both hands to cover his head, so he couldn't pick himself off the heap he was on the ground. Like pounding on a caterpillar into the dirt, I hit him over and over. If he covered his head, I'd hit him in the side. If he covered his body, I'd go for his head. If he rolled over, I'd strike his feet, his knees, his elbows. I didn't care where anymore. Just by delivering one blow after another, I induced panic in him. I retained my overwhelming advantage, but I hadn't done nearly enough to deliver a fatal wound. Her uncle skillfully pulled himself up off the ground and started to run like a fleeing rabbit. It wasn't a judgment he made after seeing my face and deciding whether to fight me. Right now he was fleeing by instinct, just trying to escape from the threat that had presented itself. A counterattack from the more physically capable uncle that I was most concerned about. He may have run, but it wasn't all that unlucky. The odds were in my favor. The uncle didn't run away toward people but off the path and into the woods. How pleasant that he'd run in a direction where nobody else was. He was fleeing to a strange geography like a rat that instinctively ran to the tight spots over and over. Yes, he was no longer human. He was a rat. The blood vessels in my legs expanded and my total oxygen supply increased. I lowered myself to gain the most explosive velocity I could. Without breathing, I became a wind-like shadow and dashed. I crossed thickets, crushed dead tree branches underfoot, and drove through the woods like a bullet. He ran so cowardly, arms flailing as he went. After catching up to him, I didn't need so much as a blink of an eye to strike him again. My senses, mind, and body were all sharpened purely to kill this man. This is the first time I felt like this. Well, this is the first experience I ever had killing someone. It felt natural continuing to do this for the first time, and that meant I had this much talent for killing. Or perhaps the act of killing was so simple that anyone could do it. I didn't struggle or grow tired at all chasing the clumsily fleeing uncle. No matter how much he ran, it was like trying to get away from his own shadow. He couldn't get away from me. I could easily aim at his back, his shoulder, his head, even from this unnatural stance. Each time I struck him, he wailed in pain and begged pitifully for forgiveness, but it didn't disturb my mind. I was neither excited nor plagued by hesitation like before. I felt sharp like a carnivore. Of course, so did the uncle who was trying to run away because he didn't want to die. He didn't want to be eaten like an herbivore running with all its might trying to get away. Despite all the attacks, despite all the hits, he kept on fleeing without even staggering, and despite the bad footing in the forest, he impressively never tripped over anything. But there was no need to admire that fact. It was simply proof that he was no more than an animal. If he chased, he would run. If he was going to be killed, he would run. He bared his fangs at the weak but couldn't oppose the strong whatsoever. He was lowly, vulgar, a diminutive animal. Such a puny little creature had harmed Sadako. scar after scar into her body, and mine deep wounds that might have never gone away as long as she lived. My cold and calm emotions suddenly turned into bestial ones. My personality changed as something specialized for murder, purely to devour the diminutive animal before me. The uncle gave a puny little shriek, covered his head, and ran and ran and ran. I'm impressed by how much you can run. Fine, run as much as you like. I will be your death. I will choose the moment at my leisure. Your legs will hurt, your lungs will feel like it's about to burst, your head will hurt from lack of oxygen. If you feel the pain has become worse than death, then by all means stop any time. Without turning back, suffocating on his terror of the approaching death, he just ran shamefully onward. He ran, but his chase, his head bashed with a metal bat, sweat and drool flying everywhere, blood clinging to him. From his mouth came the sounds of coarse, irregular breathing, high-pitched screaming that verged on crying, and pleas for forgiveness to someone I didn't know who. Each and every second was a second of atonement that I granted him. Now run, 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 and fall and moan and die! Where'd you even crawl out from anyway? You were never here before. If you were never here, you should have never showed up. If you never showed up, our lives would still be fun and enjoyable. We have gone to today's festival, waited for each other, and gone to the shrine laughing. We would have been playing amongst the stalls right about now. We'd be browsing the strange food stalls, and you only saw the festivals trying to get prizes from goldfish scooping, ring throwing, or target practice. Mia would surely make it to a competition, and we as a club would have a grand time. And everyone would have been cheering for Rika's dedication dance, and everyone would say how fun it was. It would have given us energy for days to come. Fun, enjoyable, and funny. Warm times spent with friends. And that would have happened, but it didn't. And now it was all smashed to pieces! There was no doubt that what the world was like if you never showed up. You were the obstacle, the mistake, the heresy in that world. But I would correct that mistake now. I would erase you and make this so last week never happened. Tonight was the Watanagashi festival, the holy night where taking just one life was permitted in the name of Oyashiro's curse. It looked like the Higurashi stopped crying at some point. When the Higurashi cried, everything would end. And the Higurashi silenced. Lowly one, the hour of atonement is at end. The Higurashi has stopped their crying. Thus it is the end. The end. The end. The end. And you don't have to run away anymore. Die with those dirty brains of yours smashed everywhere! Lightning and thunder struck like an explosion. It was so loud it shook the ground, and I smelled gunpowder. The response I got this time was clearly different from the one before. The metal bat crunched into the crown of his head. It was like the top of his head had caved in. The bat felt like it was biting him. It had been the final killing attack that visited him. When I didn't overlook the opening, he left as his knees gave out under him. I remained alert for the few moments, and then thud. I planted both knees on the ground and fell forwards, burying my head in the ground. I'd been holding my back, my ragged breathing, but now it all came out of me like a dam bursting. My head was dizzy and light, and unable to maintain my balance. I leaned against a nearby tree. The uncle didn't try and guard his head any longer. After a disgusting sort of spasm, he stopped moving. Did I get him? Did I get him for sure? I fought back my exhausted urge to fall over where I stood and drew toward him carefully, bat still at the ready. It was possible he was faking and trying to wait it out. Should I check for a pulse? I realized right away, though, how unnecessary that would be. If I thought he might be faking it, then I would just have to keep pummeling him until I was satisfied. I fought back my ragged breathing again. I swung my bat far above and brought it down. His body leaped like a bow, but he didn't try and cover his head. Once again, I aimed for his head and swung. His reaction was the same this time. After spending a few moments making his head into mochi, the hits gradually started to feel different and started to spray like a filthy, dark red liquid everywhere. That was enough. It was definite now. I had absolutely killed him. There was no sense of accomplishment nor one of regret. I didn't feel anger towards Sadako's uncle, nor pity towards Sadako herself. Instead, right now, I was feeling like my heart had been stolen by the downpour. It begun to rain at some point, and how comfortable it felt. The rainwater drenched my body and dripped down to the ground. The excitement within me faded as the rain washed away the grime. In exchange, my shoes were so wet they made splashing sounds. And despite abusing Satoshi's bat like that, it wasn't bent very much. There were a few dents in it, probably from hitting the man, but nothing that would make it seem like different from before. Instead, had it been stained with black, with red, with mud and blood. But that itself would be evidence. The one piece of evidence needed to prove that my delusions hadn't been daydreams, and that I'd entered Sadako's uncle for all eternity. Alright, Keiichi, calm your mind. The time for passion's over. Now's the time to be cold as ice. I needed to bury the body, but where was I? I simply followed the man as far as he ran into the darkness. I couldn't take a guess at how far we'd run. It was already pitch black around us. The only light I had to go on was the very faint lights on the road a little further down. It was so dark out. I hadn't noticed the darkness until just now. My vision was so good I could only see the man's ugly hairline. I could have counted the pores in his head. It was only now that I realized how much crazy strength I had mustered at that moment. I went over to the streetlight. I looked up and down the road, desperately trying to figure out where I was. Oh no. This is the one road connecting Hinamizawa to the town. We were unbelievably far away from Sadako's house. Had the two of us really run so far a distance? My surprise at that was accompanied by knowledge of the miraculous fact that despite running down so far and making so much noise, we hadn't come across anybody at all. There was a long way between here and the ambush location where I dug the hole. There was no way I could carry that body that far. Wait, aside from that, the bike the man took here was still lying in the middle of the path. That would be an issue. The police could tell whose motorcycle it was by looking at its license plate. They wouldn't leave it just at that. Thankfully, the corpse was in a dark forest. In terms of urgency, dealing with the bike would come first, and I wanted to get the shovel back from where I left it next to the hole. I shouldn't drag the body there. I would have to deal with it right here. Fortunately, the ground was like mud from the downpour. It was more sludgy here than where I was before. I might be able to dig a grave quickly here. Of course, my bicycle was still over where I left it, too. It still wasn't over. Homicide had only been half of my goal. The other half would be just as important as the first. I would completely hide the body, not allowing a beginning to happen. I would erase that man like he never existed, and regain the peaceful times we had before. I bent my head backwards, and calmed my mind even further. The big water droplets struck my brow mercilessly. They were actually quite comfortable, and for a while I let my desire have its way. After confirming that I was sharp again, I started running through the rain. The motorcycle was in the grass at the roadside. Considering how it looked, it pelted with rain and covered in mud. It actually seemed like it had been lying there for a very long time. The plan was to drop the motorcycle into the swamp. The swamp was a bit of a walk from here. I lifted the bike up. I didn't think it would be so heavy. I was a little surprised. Once I had it upright, it was fairly easy to roll it along. So pushing this thing all the way to the swamp was really not something I wanted to do. I could no longer ignore my exhaustion. It warned me numerous times of how far away the swamp was. This motorcycle, I wonder if I could ride it well enough. Once I got it going, it would be basically the same as a bicycle. Wouldn't it get me to the swamp quickly? A plan suggested by my exhaustion, the anxiety getting on the motorcycle for the first time withdrew. I turned the key, and just as you kick this pedal, right? Yeah! It's on! And then I gripped the handlebars, first the right, then the left. Maybe I twisted them too much. The bike lurched and did a wheelie like an angry horse. I lost it for a second, but it was a problem of how much torque to apply. Let's try that again. This time slowly, gently. That time it went well. It was strange to be on a two-wheeled vehicle that would even go if I didn't pedal. Very odd, but I got used to it quickly. Mia once told me you could get a scooter license within a day. She was very clearly right. This was pretty easy. I needed to throw the metal bat into the swamp too. I didn't know how I could pack a bat onto the motorcycle. Without much other choice, I stuffed it into the back of my shirt, feeling like a ninja carrying a katana. If I put the tip down the seat of my pants and hunched it over, it wouldn't fall out. I got back on the bike, and this time got going without any difficulty. I carefully pressed the button labeled light, and a rather strong light came on, illuminating the way forward. I probably really shouldn't have turned it on, but I didn't have any way of seeing at this point, and had zero confidence I could ride through this darkness. As the rain came down on me, I maintained a precarious balance and inched my way toward the swamp. Along the way, I ran across a few people who seemed to be returning from the festival, but none of them had any interest in me. They were all either soaked through the rain or hurrying on their ways home, or had their umbrellas low and their heads down. Yesterday I might have been wary of even these passerbys, but right now it didn't seem to me much cause for concern. In fact, it'd probably be less suspicious to be riding out in the open like this instead of sneaking around. More and more, though, I started to think of the idea as naive, brought on by my exhausted state. I climbed a steep hill. On a bike, the hill would have just put me out of breath, but I just had to accelerate a little bit to climb the entire thing. Motorcycles sure are convenient. For a moment, its light illuminated a sign before I passed by it. Onigofuchi Swamp. Good children do not play around here. Still, it wasn't like the way to the swamp was cordoned by a metal fence or anything. Parents and teachers would get mad at you if they found out you were playing by the swamp, but some of the bad kids in my class apparently snuck out here sometimes to see the giant crayfish in the place. They talk about before how they'd go to the candy shop and buy some pickled squid and just tie it to the fishing line and throw it, and all the crayfish would come running. Once I got up to the bank, there was a tiny ritual shrine and traditional ropes on one of the trees. And as it swallowed the downpour whole, the blackened swamp had waited for me. If I slammed on the accelerator from the cliff-like stop I was on now, the thing would fly straight into the middle of the swamp. I had to be careful not to fall in with it. If I drowned and disappeared, man, what a stupid ghost story that would be. On the night of Watanagashi, Sadako's uncle's corpse was found in the thicket by the road leading to the town, and Maibara Keiichi went missing. People would whisper I'd be demoned away. The 5th year's curse would be a half-baked one. I got off the bike, twisted the accelerator as hard as I could. I let go when it seemed like it would drag me forward. The bike shot off the cliff and was swallowed down into the swamp, leaving a far fainter splash than I imagined. Its surface was being pummeled by the downpour. The muddy, filthy water was flowing into it. I couldn't even make out the motorbike I'd just thrown in there. It was pretty heavy after all. It'd be quickly engulfed by the soft mud at the bottom of the swamp. It'd be pulled deeper and deeper, until it reached hell itself. I felt no reluctance whatsoever in throwing the man's motorbike back down to the land of demons, but I did have a tinge of regret that I did it with Satoshi's bat. The muddy water washed off the gore sticking to it, and it sunk easily. I had sort of shared today's events with Satoshi, so I wanted to give it a quiet place to stay. That's how I felt. I started to feel more like returning it to the locker from before, so it could continue to keep watch over Sadako. Satoshi, I probably, misunderstood you. Satoshi listened quietly without nodding. I'm absolutely convinced now. You're the one who beat your aunt to death last year and saved Sadako. I always scorned you and called you a coward who ran away, but I was wrong. To the rest of the world, some deviant was behind that incident. But I know that was something you did for her, and then you disappeared. You finally got back that peace and lost it within days. So, I swear to you that I will live life to the fullest from now on. Live it enough for both of us. I'll live on as though this week, this day never happened, but I will never forget the short time we shared together for as long as I live. I didn't know what expression Satoshi made as he listened, but as someone who had protected the same girl, I felt he had smiled and given me his blessing. And then, my hand moved of its own accord. The bat I hesitated to throw away left my hands and flew through the air. It traveled its parabolic path, spinning all the while. The swamp absorbed it without a sound. There weren't any even ripples when it hit the surface. That surface was tempestuous because of the downpour, and the bat was long gone. For a moment I regret having thrown it, but I realized that might have been what Satoshi had wanted. You're right. I still can't let myself give in to emotion just yet. I would return for my shovel, get on my bike, dig a hole to hide the body, and bury it. It seemed like a simple sequence of events, but I felt extremely exhausted. I had to do it all tonight. Satoshi left me, with only advice that I needed to finish this up soon, and fell silent for eternity. and disappeared at the bottom of the demon's abyss. I returned to the path I had ambushed her uncle on. My bike was hidden, sleeping in the brush. I stood it back up. My whole body felt heavy, but I needed to finish this by the end of the day, even if I had to whip myself to do it. Oh, I forgot something. I didn't just come here for my bike. The shovel was here too. Not good. I was zoning out. Every once in a while, if I let my guard down, my vision would almost go black. Pull yourself together, Keiichi. It's still not over. I went into the grove of trees, looked for the hole in which I'd dipped the shovel. Fortunately, I had hidden it deep in the forest, not wanting it to be seen, and now everything was back in the night. I couldn't see anything anymore. I reawakened my consciousness and realized just how big this annoyance really was. Wait, you can't be serious! The sweat the rain washed away before it came back up to my skin, deep, deep in the forest where the streetlights could never reach. The fact that it'd be so pitch black had been completely uncalculated with this much darkness. Even if I had been able to kill him right away like I'd planned, I didn't know if I could still have buried him without a problem. What should I do? I simply couldn't find the shovel tonight. If I forced myself to go deep into the forest, I'd lose even my sense of direction. It might actually get lost in there. That might have been an exaggeration, but it was fully possible I'd trip over a tree root and strain a muscle. All right, my house's storage room. There's some kind of shovel there, the same fold-up kind. Couldn't I go back to the house to get the shovel and give up on finding the shovel tonight? It's not as though the same Mybar is written on the shovel. But it seemed like an unusual item from the import variety store made in another country, so I didn't want to leave that shovel here. But in this darkness, I couldn't do anything. I should give up and go back to the storage room. And there was an electric lantern in there. If I used that for light, I could look for it, but it was so extremely dark. Could I light the way with just the lantern? The light of a lantern in this dark night. I couldn't discard the possibility of drawing eyes. I doubted I could find the shovel with the lantern's feeble light. Besides, I left the body there for a pretty long time already. My sense of fear, dulled through the excessive exhaustion, finally reared its ugly head. Anyway, for now, the most important thing was to hide the body. A shovel being found wouldn't be a big deal, but a corpse. If they find that, I share the same fate as Satoshi. First, I'd go to the storage room at home. Then I'd get the lantern. Now that it's gone this dark, I might still need a light to dig a hole for the body, too. And I'd get another shovel. I'd deal with the body first thing. Once that was done, I'd come back here and find the shovel and bring it back. I had to. Had to at least do this much, but I was so tired. But complaining was getting me nowhere. If I started getting complacent now, everything would have been for naught. At some point, I had sat down. I gritted my teeth and endured lifting my heavy hips. The night was young. Of all the nights I experienced, none had ever been this long. When would it all end? The night was young. The lights at home were dazzlingly bright. Suddenly they reminded me how hungry I was. I checked the clock and it was almost 7. I thought for sure it'd be 2 and 3 in the morning already. I was surprised how messed up my biological clock had gotten just from this one night. There was a warm light coming from the curtains in the living room window. The worlds between here and what was beyond those curtains were so different. If only that man hadn't showed up, I would have been in that light. I'd be excited from the festival. I'd be talking to my parents about how much fun I had with all my friends. And then, even though they made a hot meal for me, I would have eaten way too much at the stalls, barely eaten half of it, and gone to my room. No doubt I'd crawl into my futon and easily let myself fall asleep. But right now, I was completely different. There wasn't a single ember of warmth from those weak street lights. Right now, I was unconnected to any time spent with my family. There was neither warm food nor time to allow myself to sleep. My body exposed to the cold rain, I knew that I simply had to spur myself to accomplish what I must. I realized how timid and cowardly I was becoming. For what reason did I need to kill someone, even if it felt this terrible? I had lost sight of my purpose. I selected the fastest, most fundamental way of saving Sadako, and executed it without hesitation. That man was dead. He was gone. He would never ever hurt Sadako again. We all fought frantically for days on end about Sadako's problem, and finally, with no options, we gave up and I'd solved it in one night, by myself without anyone's help. Right about now, Sadako would be making dinner for her uncle despite not knowing when he'd return. She might be spending the night trembling in fear of whether he'd yell at her for how it tasted. But her uncle wouldn't come home. She wouldn't have to fear his wrath, nor let him make her feel sad. I see. I did it. I successfully saved Sadako. All I'd been thinking about for a long time was killing that man, and I'd forgotten the feeling that it was actually all to save her. I did. I did something good. That's right. I did something good, didn't I? I felt hot tears coming from my eyes. That's when I first realized the exhaustion I'd been feeling was actually guilt. The blade of guilt. For a while now. I'd just been scraping away its tip, hurting my heart. It hurt so bad I couldn't stand it. It was throbbing painfully. It hurt so much. It was so painful that I cried. I cried tears of joy at saving Sadako. I didn't know why, really, anymore. I just cried. My tears fell and fell. As I stood there for a while, coming to terms with those warm tears, my heart was comforted a little. All right, my boy Keiichi. That's enough. There's nothing to regret or feel ashamed about. Both my body and mind were thoroughly exhausted, and that was a fact. It was only natural I couldn't feel anything. Even tomorrow and the day after that, I might not be able to feel anything for a while. But there was one thing that was true. There was an undisputable fact that I had saved Sadako. One day we would surely be rewarded. One day I could be proud of how distressing an enterprise I had undertaken to get Sadako's smile back. So I could wait for that day. I had to put the finishing touches on this night. If I left it undone, everything I'd accomplished today would be for naught. I looked up at the sky, which looked like it wouldn't stop raining any time soon, and I rubbed my eyes and summoned forth the energy from my core again. How long did I plan on spacing out? This isn't the time for daydreaming. Someone could find the corpse this very moment. That pessimistic thought was proof. The very natural emotion of fear had returned to me. As I allowed the fear to spur me onwards, I went to look for the other shovel and the lantern inside the storage room. It was fortunate I remembered what it looked like around the streetlight the body was near. With how dark it was quite possible I wouldn't have been able to look for it either. I didn't realize that when I left the place, so the idea of memorizing the spot hadn't even crossed my mind. And that's why I had to call it fortunate that I managed to get back to the body like this. The corpse was now located in a big muddy puddle. Half the thing had already sunk into the swamp like a pool of water. I only realized afterward, but there was actually an unused irrigation channel right nearby, clogged with fallen leaves and dirt. This is the rainwater flowing in from there. My shoes had been awash with water for so long time now, so without any hesitation I stepped into the puddle. The whole muddy stream started flowing back. Luckily, I couldn't leave any traces, like bloodstains. The rain was like a blessing from heaven. I checked around me, paying very close attention, then turned off the lantern. It became pitch black, but my eyes got used to the darkness in a few moments. Once I managed to reach the streetlight on the other side, I was able to make out even faint lights. I struck the shovel into the puddle right next to the corpse. The ground was even looser here than I thought, and the shovel's tip easily slid inside of it. I had to hurry and dig. If I took too much time, I might lose energy and my strength again. It almost felt like digging a hole in the sand of the beach. It was easy to dig, but no matter how hot, the muddy water kept flowing in, covering the hole. The digging wasn't going as well as I hoped. I dug, and the water would go in, so I couldn't get a sense of how deep it was. The only way for me to measure it was to bury my own foot in the mud. I'm digging just fine. It's all right. Don't be disheartened. Dig, dig, dig. Occasionally a car would come by on the road. I'd hurry to hide myself in the trees. Everyone was only passing through. They wouldn't have their eyes peeled in this kind of darkness. I understood it logically, but I still couldn't help but hide. What I was really scared of wasn't quite the one of those cars would coincidentally happen to witness me here. It was the distance I could spot cars was gradually getting shorter. At first I noticed the splashing sounds from really far away cars drove through them. I started noticing them less and less, and with the car that just passed by I didn't notice until its headlights were upon me. I felt my senses growing duller by the second. If someone were to take a peek in secret, as I was burying the body at the worst possible time, maybe I wouldn't even notice. The moment I thought that, I took a good look all around me. I aroused through my half-asleep senses and searched for any signs of presence nearby. What if I found out someone was spying upon me from these trees? A carnivorous feeling snarled at me, glaring. If there was, I would dig another hole. I'd come this far already. In order to achieve perfection, I didn't care how much more I had to pay. I didn't know what kind of face I was making at the time, but it was definitely a fervent and glaring one. My 5 senses reached that conclusion, that nobody was present. I didn't breathe a sigh of relief. How long had I been digging this mud out of here? It was deep enough for it to go up to my knees. Maybe this was enough. Maybe I'd throw the corpse in as a test. I swallowed, getting my breathing under my control. Despite how much I breathed in him, I was afraid of touching the corpse. So instead, I dragged it by the feet to the hole. It took more than just a wriggle and tug to do it, but of course it did, considering this man's weight was easily 80 kilograms. I rallied all my strength and dragged him. At this point, my groundless fears that he might suddenly start moving again had vanished long ago. His body perfectly fit into the muddy hole. It was more than deep enough. All right, let's bury him. Quickly, quickly, quickly. If I did a perfect job of burying him here, everything would be over. I'd hide in the hole. None of this would have ever happened. When I realized I only had a little farther to finish everything, I was racked with pointless anxiety, like I was in a race against time. It was like I was absorbed in a delusion, that if I didn't bury the body quickly, it might come back to life. In any case, in a great rush, I poured mud and dirt into the hole. If I didn't work efficiently, someone might find me here. Until now, I figured if someone saw, I'd just kill them, but not anymore. I was arrested with such absolute fear that if someone saw me, it would all be over. As I finished the work off, I drew the surface of the shovel across the ground, trying to make it flat. I was completely covered in mud at that point. The rain washed the mud off my body, but not off my now blackened clothing. My body and mind were caked in panic, with fear, with rain and sweat and mud. My shoulders were heaving. I threw down the shovel and sat in the mud. I was so exhausted that I wanted to lie down right here and sleep. It was over. This time. For real. It was over. The man was now on the bottom of the wet dirt. Right now, this moment, there were traces that his place had been dug up, but the rain flowing and muddy water would completely cover it all within moments. Yes, it was over. I did it. I did it. I did it. You motherfucker! I fell over backwards, faced up in the mud. Raindrops pelted my face without mercy, but I didn't care. After staying for a while, resting my mind, I got up again. It was over. So let's go home. You already buried the whole thing, so now it's like it never happened. It never happened, so there's no reason for me to stay out here and get rained on. I wobbled to my feet. I wouldn't use the shovel anymore. I considered disassembling it, but I didn't have the strength in my absolute exhaustion. I didn't really need to take it apart anyway. Dragging the shovel behind me, I headed toward the light. I stood up my bike. It had been laying in the grass by the road. I didn't know how I was going to get the still assembled shovel into the front basket. I put the shovel back to my shirt like I had done with the baseball bat. Unlike the bat, the corner of it was on my back, making it very painful. Plus, if I relaxed my posture even a little, it'd fall out behind me. Alright. So I ended up having to carry the shovel in my left hand and ride my bike using only my right hand. Not only was I in the state of total exhaustion, this was a downpour. One hand on the handlebars. I was swaying to and fro like a drunk, but I didn't care. Even swaying like this, I got a little closer to home every time I pedaled. Okay, we are going to quick save and stop right here. Yep. Alright, that's done.